Welcome back to World of Stands. This is a game that I didn't really have too many intentions playing again, but when I was on the Roblox game page, one of my past games that I played popped up and it was World of Stands, and it still had like 1,500 people playing on it, and I was like, well, I mean, that's a decent number, right? So where are a lot of these other crappy games at? And so then I went and I checked things like Roblox's Unbreakable and Stand Upright Rebooted, and to my general surprise, a lot of those games are completely falling off, but for whatever reason, this one isn't. And so I was like, well, I might as well go figure out why that is. So I logged in, and hence today's video. I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit that I was surprised that they'd wrapped up their Part 2 storyline, as a very, very large part of me expected to log in and everything to be basically the exact same way that I left it, aside from some new stands that they added that I would never be able to use. If you saw my video from, I think it was like almost a year ago now, when I played this game a few months after it released, you'll know that they added some stands and I couldn't use any of them because they were so unbelievably rare that it just wasn't doable. I'll give you a bit of a spoiler alert on this video. We had the same problem again, and the only new stand that I got to use was the hand, which is a little bit disappointing, but I guess that is what it is. Anyways, like I said, the storyline updated. They managed to complete their Part 2. So, what did I think of it? Well, this is hard, because I would go as far to say that this storyline would be really, really good just globally, from the very beginning when you first log in all the way up until the Part 2 that we're at right now, if it was attached to a different game. And I feel really bad saying that, but there's just something about World of Stands, especially its general gameplay, that is just, it feels so off to me. And it's not off in a way that it's just like I'm just not used to it, because I've played other games where I'm not used to it. Like, I'll even go as far to say that Blox Fruit, when I played it, at least the general gameplay feel felt right, even if I didn't like it. But here it feels off, and I don't know exactly what it is. I guess the best way that I can describe it is that World of Stands as a game, like the whole of it, feels manufactured. And I don't know if that is a good way of describing it. I don't know if any of you are going to understand what I mean when I say that, but it feels manufactured or sterile almost. I don't know if either of those words are the best way to sum it up. I don't know if anyone feels the same way that I do about that, but that's sort of where I'm at. And so when it comes to combat, I just think that it lacks impact. It feels very almost out of your control. It's just not great. I'm not a very huge fan of the combat, and unfortunately, because of that, it basically drags down the entire rest of the game, especially when it comes to the storyline. Because there's a lot of things in here that are just sort of small things that people probably wouldn't think very much of, that I know full well people had to code systems out for just for something that takes like 4 seconds to do. And it's something that sets the game apart from basically all the other games in the genre, because there's actually things that you do here that aren't just go to location, talk to person, kill enemy. None of them are rocket science. Things like opening up a passcode menu and typing in a passcode, or finding an item, bringing it back, and using that item to open a door or drain some water. None of those are huge, like, rocket science moments, but the fact that they're here is a huge step in a correct direction, considering that, like I said, pretty much every single other game on the market is just go here, talk to guy, kill guy. Now, obviously, I don't have a whole lot to say about the actual story of the storyline, because I don't know what you would expect from these things. It's not super compelling. It's a Roblox JoJo storyline. It basically just sort of funnels you through a bunch of arenas where you need to pick stuff up and do some stuff. The dialogue is there. It's not filled with typos, so I can give them that. And it's charming, I suppose. It would probably appeal to me if I was a younger kid, which I'm sure this is geared towards, but as an adult, I'm playing through and I'm just sort of rolling my eyes sometimes, which I get it. I'm not the target audience, so I'm not going to be too harsh on that, but still, you kind of get the idea. The other thing that I can mention that wasn't the combat that felt like it sort of held back the entire game as a whole was that it was very clear, because this is a Roblox game and it's made to try to facilitate multiple people, that a lot of these areas of the game would work a hell of a lot better in a single player experience, or like instanced zones per person, and maybe having it so you could bring a party with you. But the fact that it's not that, and it's all happening at the same time and people can be coming in and out, made it very obvious that the game developers had to make some, I guess, concessions in terms of making the game work in order to make the game work. And those things were very, very evident. Quick and easy examples would be the enemy AI and the amount of enemies, as well as how fast they respawn. Because you'll go into an area and you'll get tasked with killing 3 enemies, and oftentimes you'll go and the enemies just won't notice you until you're basically right on top of them, which just feels kind of weird. You'll also have moments where you'll kill an enemy and then you'll start fighting another enemy, and the enemy you just killed respawns either right on top of you or right behind you, and then you start getting ganked. And as I said earlier, the combat in the game is already not super great, and it really falls apart when you start getting ganked, because it can just feel absolutely helpless as you get stunned over and over again, or hit with ragdolls as the AI is alternating between their attacks, and it's just kind of frustrating. But the point I'm trying to make is, if they had had these as instance zones where one person can enter, the enemies don't respawn, and you were tasked with clearing out an area rather than killing 2 enemies in an area, I think it would have worked a hell of a lot better. But I understand that they probably didn't want to do this for a lot of different reasons, so it's going to be another one of those, well, it is what it is kind of moments. While playing, there were 2 boss type enemies. One of them was sort of a mini boss, the other one was an actual boss. And I actually think the mini boss was significantly better than the real boss, and the real boss could have been really fun if it wasn't held back by some stuff I'll be talking about. But the mini boss was Strazo, and I didn't quite understand some of the mechanics at first, but once I did, I thought it was really cool. Basically, he's in a room with a whole bunch of electric panels, and the electric panels will randomly electrify themselves, as well as when you've done enough damage to Strazo, he'll jump up onto the middle little generator, punch it, and then it will electrocute the entire floor. And when he does that, you need to open a platform and jump on it. This is one of those things, like I said, where it's not that huge of a mechanic, but it's a mechanic, and that makes it so much better than so many other games' boss fights. In recent memory, I was playing Halo Infinite, a AAA game, and my biggest complaint there was about the boss fights and how a lot of them were just bullet sponge enemy without any underlying mechanics, and how that's just not very interesting and not very fun. And here, it's the opposite of that. You have an enemy that doesn't have a ton of health, but there's some boss mechanics here to keep it interesting and make you do stuff other than just hit the boss. Now, the other actual real final boss, at least in the current build of the game, is Cars. But before we talk about him, I want to talk about the domain that he's attached to. The Undead Coliseum domain is actually pretty cool, and I was a pretty big fan of it all the way up until the end. The very beginning has you fighting off an onslaught of zombies that spawn over and over and over again, and unlike a lot of the other sections of the game where getting ganked is just impossible, this actually worked out pretty well, probably mostly because the AI's attacks are really slow, and it's just, well, it's designed for you to be getting ganked, unlike a lot of the other enemy types in the game. They could have made it so these big guys charged you on top of all the other enemies, but they didn't do that. And they didn't do that on purpose because they knew you'd be getting ganked at this moment. So the first section works out really well, and I enjoyed playing through it. The second section is also pretty cool, but it has some problems. You jump into a chariot, and now you're fighting in a chariot race versus Wamu. This is not something I would ever expect when jumping into this game. It's such a huge and far departure from everything you've been playing up until this point, and that's really cool. I will mention that the readability on the lanes for avoiding tornadoes, as well as the fact that you seemingly don't have any sort of fail state here, is a little bit disappointing. I think it would have been better if getting hit too many times killed you. Maybe it does, but I got hit a fair few times while figuring out what the hell I was doing, and it seemed like you just couldn't fail. Anyways, you finish up the chariot race, then it's on to fighting a few more enemies by a bridge. This would be a pretty cool arena if the AI was a little bit better, because normally you'd have to try to fight the guys while avoiding the ranged enemies, but instead you can just kite enemies away from the ranged enemies and kill them, which, I mean, probably worth it because if you did have to fight the ranged enemies because of how the AI works, it'd be a real pain in the ass. Complete this area, lower the bridge, head across the bridge, and it's time to fight against Cars. Funnily enough, Cars in his first iteration was actually a pretty fun fight. You have to fight him while picking up crystals in order to power UV lamps. Eventually you knock him down, and you gotta put all the crystals in the lamps and then point the lamps at Cars. Cars himself has some attacks that feel sort of like BS and almost uncounterable, or at least very, very hard to read on how you're supposed to deal with them. But generally speaking, I didn't struggle too hard here. You take out Cars, you shine the lights on him, and that's when he turns into the ultimate life form. You hop on a plane, and then you head to the volcano where Joseph fights Cars at the end of part 2. I thought it was really cool that there was a scene transition here. Unfortunately, that gets basically thrown straight into the dumpster because the Cars Ultimate Life Form boss is just complete horse shit. It's total bullshit. I don't know what the fuck you're supposed to do here. I'm sure there's some sort of solution, and I'm sure if you've played it 100 times, you can figure out exactly how to deal with all of the attacks. But it feels like every single attack breaks your guard. It feels like every single attack has a ridiculous hitbox. The AI never misses. The AI starts attacking you from like a mile away. It's just an absolute nightmare. It's been a while since I've fought a boss that just felt this BS. I don't even think any of those bosses from Halo Infinite came close, even though I beat this quicker than those. Just because at least in those, I felt like I was sort of in control, and in here, I felt like I had very little to none. Constantly getting thrown off the arena, or hit by an AoE attack from 40 miles away, or hit by a projectile that I couldn't react to, or he hit me with a grab that I felt like had no startup. It was just, oh man, it was a mess. That's the best I can say. It was a mess. Finishing up that dungeon though, and that's pretty much where the content stops. As with the last time that I played this game, I didn't get any of the new stands that were added. And it's not like there was a whole lot added from the last time I played anyway. I think there was maybe 3 or 4 things added in the 9 to 11 months that I didn't play, so not a wonderful track record, but also not quite YBA. I tried to grind some Rokas and Arrows, which takes forever, and I really wish it didn't. Got nothing from it, and that's basically where I called it a day. But the one thing that sort of stuck with me the entire time, and what I was thinking of the entire time I was playing was, why exactly does this game still have 1,000 people playing it? Like I said, the storyline wasn't bad, and I'm sure people are playing through it, but I completed the second part of the storyline in 2 hours. If most people are completing this in 2 hours, let's be generous. Let's say it takes them 3.5 hours. If they complete this, and then there's not really anything else for them to do, and the combat is mediocre at best and just flat out unfun at worst, what exactly are these 1,000 people doing? I genuinely don't know, and I'm legitimately curious because I don't have, I'm coming up completely empty. So if you in the comments want to go down, maybe you play this game and you want to let me know, what exactly is going on here? What are you guys doing? I don't quite get it. Anyways, I think that's all I have to say about the game. It's still here. It's still got people playing it. The new stuff is all right. And that's all. If you enjoyed the video, of course, you can leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't do those things. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. And I'll see you guys next time.